This is the Butter Show. Welcome. I am continuing with DayLife Physical Standards, Part 5. I think this might be the last of the series on DayLife Physical Standards. Just at the beginning of this one, I'd like you to drop a comment asking any questions about physical standards, anything I haven't covered in the last 4 videos. Any questions about the physical standards, so not any of the intellectual, emotional, or spiritual ones. And I think I have just about covered all of the physical standards. So I wanted to go in on this video into some of my personal experience with how I have changed since practicing physical standards, which I started in 2019 all the way until now. Before I get into that, please make a wash. The Automat is my one and only sponsor. The Automat is where you send your belief to be washed, belief stored in your money, social capital, time, vulnerability, reputation, assets. But when I'm on Instagram, I'm talking mainly about financial washes. That's where you begin, and that's where most people are only able to start. Some people can't even start there. But the links to wash are cash.me/$washitall, paypal.me/washitall, and you can DM me for crypto, links, government coin, and yeah, buy back some soul. So the way I would describe beginning standards in earnest, especially someone like me who is going IRL and washing daily in concert with following physical standards and other standards, but that was the baseline and where I began. Doing all of that at all of a sudden, like quitting everything cold turkey and being thrust into a completely social and way more human and connected environment that's very, on display. It's social, it's public in the way that everyone knew where I was going and what I was doing, or thought they did, or whatever. It was kind of like being a baby, very uncomfortable, and like you're starting over as a new person in a lot of ways. And in public, like I said, pretty cringe, pretty ugly and messy. So I got here and I looked and acted crazy, and all kinds of feelings came pouring out of me, or became being felt by my body, because I had started to feel my body, because I had stopped doing all these things that cut me off from feeling my body and myself and processing things. I finally had the room to do that, and all the shit that came up was backlogged years and years, repressed by things like my rackets, other bullshit coping mechanisms, drugs, alcohol, all of the physical things that you do when you're not following standards that I've gone over plenty by now. And you can look back, a lot of shit was stolen or removed online, or taken by other people, but from DayLife Army I still have tons of videos. You can go back in chronology and at least a couple years ago see how different I was, I just am looking at my notes right now, and I have something written about autism that really doesn't make sense coming up next. So maybe I'll get back to it. But yeah, just thinking about when I was first here and how difficult basic things were for me. You start kind of over And the way you do things when starting over from, like, imagine you are never growing up in the pain matrix because you have just gone through so much trauma and brainwashing and things that arrest your development, and so you're like in an adult body but you're still acting like a teenager or a child, even for some people. Like, you're starting back from that point. So imagine you're at that point, and then you're relearning how to do everything in an actual human way while following these strict standards that make sure you learn things and grow, and it becomes embedded in you and your DNA, literally, and you're reprogramming yourself. So as that was happening, like, things I started to redo in that mode were very difficult. Calling people and talking to them on the phone. I remember talking to my mom like a real human and saying what I actually felt was super, super hard. Talking to anyone about who I really, as me, who I really was, being honest and sober while I was doing it. It was very difficult. Just waking up in the morning was very difficult. I didn't want to do it. And I couldn't, like, go and get my coffee and bagel or pastry to, like, give me the will to live. Like, all these things that are so tiny seeming, but there's memes, like, I need, like, girls saying, like, I need constant treats every 3 hours for me to want to be alive or, like, to keep going. You have to take all that shit away and do it emotionally. Like, provide the things you need for yourself emotionally first. It was a groundwork that I was laying that was really difficult, with obvious and massive amounts of help, energy, and resources expended by the DayLife Army back when they still did that, when you got in early enough for it to be cheap enough to get that shit. I really got that shit. I'm trying to think of, like, some of the things early on that were also really difficult for me to do. Really basic things like working on work, like the work that comes with being in a cult and this army. Like, I did it really badly, and it was really difficult. It was hard for me to juggle multiple things at the same time when a lot of my processing power and energy was being put into, like, the relearning of being human around a bunch of people, and people I wasn't used to being around and constantly around, because it was so like social and connected in a way that was super, super, super uncomfortable for me. I always had a place to, like, go and hide and retreat by myself before, and people need their alone time or whatever, but for me, I was, like, constantly avoidant of social, what would you call it? Not controversy, just like when you conflict or confrontation? Yeah, confrontation. So here I was being immersed in that, and it was exposure therapy, learning how to actually, like, have a fight with someone, actually say what I was thinking out loud, talk to people rather than just, like, feed on the vibes, like, how to create any of my own vibe at all. That was really difficult. I had to do physical standards for a long time in order to get to some of this emotional shit I'm talking right now about. And yes, I'm getting into more emotional shit, but it was all becoming more I was becoming more capable of doing all that because I was doing the foundational physical standards for longer and longer amounts of time that I had maintained them, you know? And having my own issues and struggles with the physical standards, of course. It's not easy beginning. Obviously, it wasn't like I was going out and drinking or like going back to smoking weed, but just the little things. I've, like, remembering to brush my teeth every morning, not, like, being around people smoking in public or, like, with perfume, and being able to say, like, could you move, or me myself moving. Putting up boundaries around my physical standards, like asking for new pillows from someone if I was, like, staying somewhere where they had perfume on them. Like, taking up space, it made me feel really uncomfortable. Like, asking for things and taking things was something that was very uncomfortable for me to do. And yes, you always end up taking things, but when you're uncomfortable and don't want to, you just make it cost more for the people that are providing things for you. If that makes sense for all my white ladies in the audience. I'm especially talking to you, as usual, because I love you. I love white women. They're the most. They're the most. I'll just leave it at that. We are the most. So, yeah, like, I'm not getting into real specifics, but all of these, I'm getting into the process, the process of what happened doing physical standards for, like, a year doing shit. I was starting to figure out and feel what my patterns and cycles were more. I was able to, like, feel when I was being hormonal. I was like, oh, I'm feeling like this way now because of this. Or, oh, I'm getting manic and then I have a crash. Usually, let me try and median it out a little bit. My anxiety was getting way better about things that usually were really anxiety-inducing for me, because I was raising the bar on what I was, like, attempting to do, what I was afraid of, facing those fears. All of the bad hygiene shit that I had picked up from being in the art school pipeline and just, like, leftist pipeline was being publicly brought up in social settings. Like, I'm gonna say it again, this is a social army, but back during the, like, boot camp when all the people came and did the thing, and it was very much like your habits and rackets were on display around a bunch of people, where the point was to point them out and talk about them, and no shit was left unacknowledged or unnoticed, really. So all of these weird habits I had picked up, and bad hygiene habits among other things with food, all that shit was getting dealt with and over time, worked on and figured out. And I remember before I came here, I could barely even listen to my voice on tape. Listening to my voice played back to me made me physically uncomfortable. I was like, oh my god, I sound so stupid, and I was so afraid to sound bad and to look bad and to not, say the right thing. I was afraid of being judged. Obviously, that's not a problem anymore. And it took time, but, it happened a lot faster. While it did take time, everything happens so fast here. When you're not in the pay matrix, when you're following standards, and when you're working to expand territory within a different matrix, pleasure matrix specifically, things work differently. Things untangibly happen faster. So thinking more about, what it was like before I came here. So that shit was horrible. I didn't want to be seen. I was uncomfortable having a body. I was, orthorexic, crazy. Didn't know I was autistic, which is wild to me. And I was super avoidant, which General Co was talking to me about this just this week, actually. About, you're not really that anxious of a person. You're just really avoidant. And there are things that I'm, avoiding that I feel like would cause me anxiety. But it's I'm not physically having the anxiety exactly. And I was a really anxious person, though, before I came here. But it's not that I'm anxious now anymore so much as still struggling with the avoidance issues. But back then, I avoided everything. I had bills, debt, that I would just be I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to address that. And I did it in social situations with challenges that were gonna make me grow or assert boundaries or move relationships forward, even if the moving of the relationship forward was, I don't like you and I don't want to be friends. I did not face any of that, and so I had these lukewarm half friendships that just fizzled or weren't real because I avoided any realness in them. And hey, when I started washing, when I was URL, and I was washing in Chicago still, all those relationships became real fast. And that means a lot of conflict, some of them ending or shifting drastically. And that's just the power of washing your belief, which, quick plug for a commercial break, if you are watching, please do a financial or social wash. One of the ways to social wash would even to be posting comments on this video before or after it's posted, on my wall, asking questions about DayLife physical standards. Financial washing, as you know, send to cash.me/$washitall, paypal.me/washitall, multiples of 12. So yeah, these were some of the ways that I was way different before I joined IRL with DayLife Army, and before I was doing all the physical standards. Major cult vibes. Yes, this is literally a cult. DayLife Army is a cult. So if you haven't caught up, you can look on my page. This is the first cult to call itself a cult. It's hard in, easy out, and it is pretty transparent. So, that's some of that shit that was before I came here. Obviously, things started changing pretty fast when I got here. And the best, analogy... Oh, this is why I was going to talk about autism. Okay. So, when you are inundated with way too much data, which is extremely unavoidable in the pain matrix, but people have various amounts that they're inundated with based on a lot of different factors. But say specifically autism, you're literally being injected and inundated and all types of shit that makes your body react as a kind of a defense mechanism, really, and a way of adapting, I guess. And the thing that triggers shit is sensory. You're having sensory overload. And I'm not gonna go into a whole bit about this, but it's the connection is that physical standards and following them are, as I've said before, a major cutting down of all excess data as much as you can, so that you have everything as simplified as possible, no decision fatigue, you wear the same color and outfit every day, there's nothing individualistic and exciting that you're doing in your physical realm. That should not be exciting, because you want the exciting stuff to be the energy you have freed up to have exciting relationships, exciting emotions that you're feeling, and exciting experiences. So having all of that data overload makes it impossible to relate. And with autism, that is very hard to do for people. It's very painful. It's you're an open wire, exposed because of a lot of different things. And the standards really help people with autism. They really, and most people are on the spectrum in some sort of another, because it's pain matrix year 2022, and you've had enough eugenics by this point that most people are not untouched by it and are dealing with the consequences of that. But yeah, once you pare everything down, it's surprising, only in a way that you can feel once you've done it, how different it is and how much emotional processing power you have left, and your body's physical processing power you have left for shit won't overwhelm you as much anymore. And I think when I really got to a certain point, maybe 2 years in was when it happened, maybe a little less, of doing physical standards, the next realm, intellectual, I really was able to start tackling, and it was no longer overwhelming to think about intellectual standards. And I know these are this series is about the physical standards, but just as a quick preview, intellectual standards covered things like me figuring out how to finally, or having the energy and capacity to start figuring out scheduling my day out and making my content more organized, writing more, being able to write better, just intellectually I had things more together. I was more organized, and I'm not saying in the pain matrix I wasn't somewhat organized. I had a planner, but like I said, you're starting over from when you stopped developing emotionally, which for most people in the pain matrix is teenage years. At least in a way that's human. You might develop with the aid or under the influence of all types of drugs and substances and rackets that you develop for survival's sake, emotional survival or social survival or whatever. But those things all stripped away, you start out from building everything up again. So when I was starting to build up intellectual standards again, I did everything way different in how I organized my day and what my desires were that I was working towards and what I was organizing for and how I did it. And it is magic. We talk about paperwork magic here at DayLife Army, how the pain matrix runs on paperwork magic in a lot of ways. I want to go all sovereign citizen on you right now, but paperwork is real. When you write shit down, it does change things. When you organize and plan things, it does change things. So I don't know why you commented the letter N, but feel free to elaborate. I would love to hear your thoughts. Yes, getting intellectually to standard when I was organizing shit, my day had more time in it, and things started to happen more and get done more when I started to get more intellectually to standard, to DayLife standard. So that's just a little side note. I know this is mostly physical standards, but yeah, so here I am, I'm kind of done talking about this series about DayLife physical standards. I think I've gone into it, enough. I would encourage you to try them. You can always DM me if you would like the PDF that lists all of the standards. And have a great night. I think that's it. So make a wash. Shout out to the Telegram channels that me and other DayLife Army soldiers run. If you'd like to subscribe to any of those, you can go to Telegram and search Butter, Buttur, or take a little stroll on the internet. There's lots of content to find from DayLife Army in various places, and if you make a wash and commit to washing socially and financially when you can, there are places where people who do that get added to, groups only for washers, and things that you begin to get through a relationship forming, because that's what washing does. It creates relationships with yourself and others. So yeah, that's everything. Cash.me/$wash it all. PayPal.me/wash it all. Good night.